Is Red Francis, is that a nickname that goes too far? What's your take on it?
I lived in Central Europe for 8 years and actually attempted to move to Cuba right after Pope John Paul II went there, which is a story for another time. So I'm sensitive to, let's say, too easy applications of the word communist to describe someone with left-leaning economics. All that said, the man has clearly studied some Marxist economics over the years, and I'd put him in a category, just to be safe, of the kind of democratic socialists that we see in Western Europe and on college campuses here. He's basically a Chomskyite. He puts America at the center of this kind of economic neoliberalism. He even uses the phrase, when he was in Cuba, of all things, of economic imperialism, which I think is just incredibly bass-ackwards when you compare it to what the truth of how the world and especially poor people have gotten out of poverty the last 25 years. It wasn't about complaining about income inequality. It was by adopting more free market principles that the Pope is generally opposed to.
And when his encyclical focuses on man-made climate change, and he goes around and he blames, for instance, the refugee crisis, blames it on money and says capitalism isn't good. And he said, what is it, income inequality is the root of all political, or is the root of all evil, something to that effect. He had tweeted it out back in April. I mean, these are concerning remarks and concerning stances for the vicar of Christ to be taking.
Well, let's imagine he was in Cuba talking about how capitalism degrades the dignity of the individual. That is so exactly backwards, if you think about it, especially in Cuba. Cuba hasn't flirted with a lot of capitalism over the years. They have just a little bit of wheeling and dealing that happens in Havana, much of which is taxed at about 100% by the government. So the dignity of the individual, we have learned in totalitarian and especially communist countries over the years, is especially smashed by these types of projects. You don't have the dignity of individualism. Capitalism is the only system by which individual rights and individual flourishing, including flourishing that has absolutely nothing to do with seeking money and monetary gain. That's where he and a lot of critics get it wrong. It's about, hey, I can make choices, including I can choose to be a monk if that's what I want to do, because I live in a place where there is freedom of choice. He gets that so wrong, and it's an important thing to get wrong, because the types of people who activate and act on those policies are sentencing people to a kind of poverty that we should be able to turn our backs on. I wish the Pope would listen to Bono more. Bono's out there basically saying, hey, look, development aid ain't doing it. It's actually capitalism that's pulling people out of poverty.
It's a mystery to me how he's come to this conclusion, Matt, because he, born and raised in Argentina, I don't really see him as having a lot of familiarity with capitalism to come to such a staunch opinion against it, to have such a negative opinion of it. What is shaping his view?
Well, I mean, as a lot of people have pointed out, he is a student of Peronism in Argentina. I mean, there's a left-wing critique of capitalism that is suffused in Latin American thought and has been, and it's one that's very sensitive to the notion of real and imagined imperialism from the United States and elsewhere. Unfortunately, he hasn't really graduated from the 1970s when it comes to that. So you can see that suffuses his thought when he uses these types of language out there. It's just shocking to me that we live in a world where there's 36% absolute poverty, right? People living on $1 a day or less 25 years ago. Now that's down to under 18%, and it's basically dropping with a bullet. And none of this, and I mean none of this, is because of people who acted on the policies of worrying about income inequality. You want to see a place with no income inequality? Go to Cuba, right? Everyone's poor. Everyone is wishing that they had running water and electricity and a bunch of stuff that they used to have in Havana. They don't have that anymore. The real inequality there is between the rulers, which this Pope refused to really bust their chops there. Fidel Castro, they had a very cordial and warm greeting. I don't think that's the role of someone who believes in the dignity of the individual, to give a high five to someone who has done more than many people on this planet to defame the dignity of the individual.